Hey, this is Joey. Welcome to the Exchange. Let's talk labor. So labor in the past, year and a half has been an absolute interesting mystery right now. We've had a massive unemployment across the board. And then basically this big spike where also now we have labor shortages from every single company, from industry to industry, does not matter. The question is, where's all America's workers? Where's everyone gone to? I mean, look at all your friends right now. Everybody has a job. People are looking for higher paying jobs. There's openings absolutely everywhere, but somehow we still have shortages across the board. And the question is, where have all the workers gone so far? So I pulled up here. This is actually BLS.gov, which is the Bureau of Labor Statistics. It's a daily or monthly dashboard they drop, has all the data we want across the entire labor force, kind of see what's going on, trend to trend. So you see right here, I highlighted 3.9%. That's the current labor unemployment rate as of December 2021. And you can see from September to December, I mean, it's just been a straight downhill decline across the board. You can also come up top, see the actual total number of people in the labor force right now, which right now has been pretty steady, about 162 million people across the entire U.S. labor force. It breaks it down by between men 16 and over, 20 and over, women 16 and over, women 20 and over, both sexes 16 and 19 combined, etc. And what you're really seeing here is you have this number, it's so low, we're at the point now where it's, hey, where's all the workers gone? How do we have such a change in workforce from the past 2 years to where we're at now? And like, what has changed so suddenly where all of a sudden now employers can't hire anybody because they can't find workers to fill some of those jobs? But the answer is actually pretty interesting overall, twofold. But first thing is step back. There's three types of actual unemployment going forward. So we have seasonal unemployment, which basically means the best example there is like Amazon workers during December timeframe, Q4 retail. They come in, work those 2, 3, 4 months. All of a sudden, they basically are losing their job because they downsize. It happens every year. It's very normal. The workers know it going forward. Number two is actually frictional unemployment. And that's what we're seeing right here. Frictional unemployment basically is, hey, I don't like the job I have now. I'm going to voluntarily change jobs to, from company A to company B voluntarily. During that gap, I might have a month or two off, or I might have this transition period where maybe I'm legally unemployed, but basically it's a voluntarily change. They're basically using up their, it could be vacation days, whatever it might be in between too. But roughly right now, you see those articles, it's roughly 4%, 3 to 4% of the actual U.S. labor force is changing jobs on a monthly basis, which is a massive number going forward. But really what you see here is that 3.9% unemployment, about 3% of that probably is going to be frictional unemployment. And the last piece there is actually structural unemployment. Structural unemployment, all that means is your job skills do not align with the actual underlying job skills required. The best example of this is truckers. So if the idea is hey, autonomous trucks come on board, all of a sudden it changes, hey, my skills as a trucker are no longer required, so I'm structurally unemployed unless I can either gain or find new skills that an employer would seek out to and actually find there. And that's why structural employment is so dangerous for the economy, because like those workers are in a tight bind right there, and if they can't find employment, all of a sudden you have bad things happening across the board. But interesting too, if you look at the bar graph here, this is from the Fred. This is the labor force participation rate, and you can see we've had this strong upcline throughout the 70s, 80s, and 90s. It peaked right about 2000, so right about almost the dot-com, basically top of the dot-com boom right there, or dot-com bubble. And it's almost been a steady decline from literally almost 2000 to almost literally to COVID. It bottomed out, and you see that 2015, 2016 time period. We had a small uptick actually right before COVID actually hit. So you saw in 2019, you saw a small uptick there. It peaked out at 63.4%. And then obviously you saw the massive COVID drop, which makes sense obviously because companies were downsizing, fear was absolutely rampant going forward. You see a strong recovery there too, but you're really seeing the gap there in the actual, from where we were in November, December 2019, all the way to where we're at right now. It's about 1.5% difference right now, which is roughly 2.5 million workers, which is a massive gap to really make up for. And I mean, looking at this overall too, as various kind of trends, underlying features. I mean, baby boomers retiring, the generation after them retiring too, getting pulled into retirement going forward. But the question is, how can we actually recover this rate to get it up to a higher level to actually get anywhere near where we were in potentially late 2019 to help recover some of those workers? You can actually also look at the BLS2.gov. This actually breaks down, it's the same stats as you saw before for, this is basically looking at job openings. So before we're looking at labor, this is like the labor side we looked at earlier. This is job openings. So you see right here, this is December 2020 in this column, and then all these other three columns are the last 3 months, 4 months of December, of 2021, basically like the last third of the year. I mean, it's just been absolute, every single industry you can imagine is just almost doubled, more or less. Some of them absolutely annihilated. So you come down here like food services, it almost doubled. I mean, we're looking at roughly 10% right now, 9.5, 10.2%. I mean, just massive numbers. And it's really, you're seeing the news every day. It's like, hey, companies like McDonald's or Starbucks, they can't hire enough workers to actually fulfill the jobs. I mean, this is a massive job opening dilemma here. You see government work there, it's not quite as high, because it's not quite as volatile as some other private sector industries. You can also break it down by the regions, but really every region is generally bad. There's really no one area where it's actually like going great at right now. But you're seeing some of this data. I mean, it's just like it's not sustainable for the near term. And the issue, what's going to happen potentially, is it actually could cap growth if we're not careful going forward. So that's kind of the big fear we have here is if we can't find workers and if we can't increase productivity of those workers we have right now, then obviously the U.S. 2022, 2023 growth right there is going to be a massive problem. So as I mentioned earlier, those 2.5 million gap we have now, the question is where are those laborers actually at? Where's that gap actually, like where are those people actually at right now today? And like the obvious answer is, hey, we have early retirees. So we've been looking in the last 2 years. We've had a strong equity market. We've, even continuing to today is a pretty strong equity market overall. People are cashing out 401ks, being like, hey, times are changing. Hybrid work's not my flavor. I want to make that change. I'll go ahead and just retire early. Let's say for 55 or 60, you might be tempted to retire early and be like, hey, extra labor force. Be like, hey, I have my savings. I have my nest house and everything else too. My family, kids, everyone's happy. I go ahead and pull the trigger and go retire early. That has happened too. But we're also seeing it's a shift though too, and I think part of that shift we're really seeing, what you could have guessed, is childcare and childcare services overall. So the cost of childcare has gone exponentially up in this country. So if you have a child that you want to put in childcare because you want to work a full-time job, let's say in person, so it's almost that net benefit of, hey, is the cost of childcare less than the cost of my salary coming in, less the worth of the time, etc., of me working a full-time job? And for a lot of people, especially if you have lower skills, the answer is no. It's just not worth it. If you're paying $800,000, $900,000 a month in childcare, and you're making, let's say, $1,500 every 2 weeks, plus the time factor and the stress factor, a lot of people, it's just, hey, it's not worth it overall too. Also, potentially you have family units overall too, where let's say either the husband or the significant other, etc. Let's say they're making greater income. Let's say they got a pay raise or having a great year overall too, where it's like, hey, it's that point. Hey, I want to focus on the children, focus on my family. All of a sudden now you might have a one worker household, whereas before you might have a 2 worker household, and that's definitely a big risk you have. But really also too, for a lot of people, childcare dilemma and the fear of getting your children with children getting COVID or some other issues out there like that, and this fear right there, it's a very real thing. And that's why you look at that 2.5 million basically shortfall we have in the labor force, and a lot of that probably is going to be childcare. Now, the last thing I want to mention, actually, it's actually a very important point too, and this is something that's not mentioned at all across all the various news sources you see, is actually immigration. So I pulled up this chart right here. This is basically immigration of foreign-born people into the U.S. And you can see right here, there was a strong uptick in 2016, 2017 as we expanded out, but then you see a massive drop in 2020, and obviously 2021. It's just been a huge shortfall. Now, this is color coded here. So you're seeing right here in the blues, immigrant visas. Also orange, you have work visas too. And those numbers compared to even with 2020 are massive, massive drops overall too. So the vertical axis here is actually millions of people. So the very top is 1.8 million, the very bottom is obviously 0. So we're seeing roughly in 2021, excluding student visas and everybody else and refugees, roughly 550,000 people across the board immigrated to the U.S., which is a massive drop in 2020. We're looking at 1.2 million. So if you take out the students there too, you're looking at roughly almost 800,000 workers, people that probably would be working overall in the labor force, which are totally gone now too in the absence of COVID. So this is one of those pipelines. You have to look at the U.S. growth rate. Our annualized population growth rate is not that high. It's only 0.35%. And you think of like GDP growth or company growth, I mean, the biggest thing we are is a consumption economy, service sector economy. And if population is declining, that's all going to go away. It's almost like a massive anchor on growth and future earnings for all these various companies out there. That's why countries like Japan have such a big problem, because they have shrinking populations. That's also China's big fear too. That's why they're trying to encourage the birth rates to go up even higher. And that's why the big fear is, hey, if we don't maintain our growth rate in the U.S., we're going to have potential issues. And the growth rate, it's not necessarily have to be growth by actual births. It could be immigration too. Immigration is a massive part of the U.S. economy. That's one thing we looked in the last few years. It's definitely been put to the wayside a little bit too. But in times like today, where hey, labor is tight, you have unemployment, or not unemployment's very low overall. So I mean, foreign-born immigration coming to the U.S. is extremely important to maintain that actual like productivity slash the actual economic growth across all these various sectors. And what you have now is basically the absence of this growth, because most immigrants come in usually at lower paying jobs. Some might have PhDs or technical skills, or they come in at higher paying jobs. But what you have, those lower paying wages, those people are basically missing now. And that basically everyone who worked in those lower paying jobs also now getting sucked up like a vacuum into those mid-level paying jobs or high paying jobs, etc. So basically everyone moves up a tier, and it causes this, this large wage, not inflation, but wage growth across, average American going forward. So the issue is, how do we actually restock our actual lower wage job populations? How do we actually get people in those jobs to actually be productive overall too? And that's another thing too. Another big point is like productivity overall is definitely needs to increase, because the growth rate of the U.S. economy and the way we changed in the past 2 years, I mean, the transformation from like Zoom, work from home culture, etc. It's been a massive shift. So the idea there is, as we grow faster and the economy scales out, we ramp up, and like Web 3.0, metaverse, everything else comes real. The question is there is, hey, as companies grow faster and faster, and look at their like HR labor force and be like, hey, we have to hire more people, get more people in the door. Otherwise, we can't fulfill these orders, can't fulfill this, growth overall too. And that's kind of the big fear they're seeing for 2023, 2024 is, hey, we can grow. Demand's definitely there. Supply is going to be there too, probably once it catches up. Now, the question might be holding the U.S. economy back might just be labor overall. And that's the kind of the big fear I see for 2024, 2023 timeframe. But we'll see what happens with that. Hey, definitely let me know your thoughts. Hey, comment what you think. If you like the channel, definitely subscribe. Just kick it off this week. So, hey, definitely let me know, and have a good day.